Hi, my name is Brian Cohen. I'm with the Open San Francisco Watershed Group. I want to emphasize first that we strongly believe that access to green spaces to nature is an equity issue. Access to nature improves physical and mental health. It improves well-being. It's very important to people. And we all know that southern San Francisco in particular is underserved by access to open spaces. And an improved public access to the watershed can help fill that void. If you live, for example, in the southernmost neighborhoods of San Francisco, the watershed is the same distance from your house as, say, the Presidio is. This issue of equity is also why we strongly support the PUC's proposal to introduce a permit system, and why we feel that the docent-only system, while a good start, is insufficient going forward. The docent-led tours, particularly the bicycle tours, all begin at the end of the watershed farthest from San Francisco, on a busy state highway that's unsafe for walking or biking. That means that these docent-led tours we've been hearing about are completely inaccessible for people who do not own cars. And that's an exclusion that just can't be acceptable going forward. It excludes low-income people. It excludes all the people who are therefore unable to get there simply because they don't have a car. Lastly, let me say that the thrust of this resolution is to support the PUC's environmental clearance process that they've already begun, and it's to encourage them to move forward a little faster or another step, but nothing drastic. So the things you've been hearing about the potential environmental issues, those are things that might be turned up in the environmental clearance process. But those are not reasons to not start the environmental clearance process to begin with. So in closing, I urge you to vote for this resolution, and we can find a way to have responsible access. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Marie Kranz, and I'm no longer riding a bicycle. I was born and reared in San Francisco.
Marie, can you do me a favor? Can you pull the mic just a little bit closer to your mouth so that people can hear you?
Better?
A little bit down, a little closer. Perfect.
Thank you.
Yes.
I was born and reared in San Francisco, but every Sunday the family drove down to the peninsula to enjoy all the old house that grandfather had bought almost 100 years ago. It was a small property, less than an acre, and it cost him $1,500 in Liberty bonds at the end of World War I. By the time I came along, we had indoor plumbing and electricity. The beautiful trails of Woodside turned us all into hikers, particularly Uncle Bill, who was not happy to have to take along some of us children. He said we'd only hold him back. Nearly every Sunday for over 90 years, I have passed the San Francisco watershed. And even as a small child, I marveled at its beauty. I sometimes wondered what amazing expanse of open space on the other side of the lakes really looked like. As I grew older, I wished it could be what Marin has done with its watershed lands. I am basically an environmentalist, but I do believe that a small portion of the watershed where trails already exist could be carefully set aside, carefully and respectfully set aside for the young people of today to enjoy the incredible vistas of the watershed. Thank you.
Thank you. Joel?
Hello, supervisors. My name is Gary Kremina. I'm the elected board member from District 7 of the Santa Clara Valley Water District. District 7 are the lands that are closest to the watershed areas that we're discussing today. I represent about 294,000 people, and I want to tell you a little bit about why I'm in support of it. So as you know, the Santa Clara Valley Water District is the analog in Santa Clara County for the SFBOS. We provide wholesale water to cities. In fact, District 7, we are those suburban customers. We're the area of Santa Clara County that are the ratepayers. And we're not only responsible for water supply, but we're also environmental stewardship. And the reason I support quickly and broadening access in a responsible manner to the watershed is we did the same thing in Santa Clara County. We have the same endangered species issues. We've had the same water quality issues, and there has been no challenges. We've been through CEQA and NEPA and worked out good access. So while the docent system is one system of access, it's not best practices. Maybe what we've been thinking is something along akin to what the Forest Service does. Department of Agriculture gives an online quiz, and if you answer the quiz, they give you a code to open up a code. Well, I'm also a lifetime member of the Sierra Club. Sometimes well-meaning environmental organizations get it wrong or challenging. There's sometimes, when it comes to access, a form of, well, I'll call it elitism that just says, only let a few in, and that's not social justice-based. In this category, social justice-based is allowing responsible access, especially to those that can't have time to get to open space. So I urge you to vote for the resolution and be sure the budget process supports it, even with a staff direction. Thank you.
Hi, I'm a parent in the San Francisco School District. Did a lot of greening programs with my elementary school. Took up a lot of pavement. We did put in oak woodlands, and then we took the kids hiking and camping. And one thing I found was that kids in this town have very little access to this type of space. When we took them camping, hiking in Glen Canyon, probably more than half the kids had never hiked outside of the city. When we took them camping by Ocean Beach, less than a quarter had ever been camping. And in Glen Canyon, there's no space where they're not within view of a house. And so this is an important resource, and this kind of resource is not is a resource that our kids aren't getting. And I think that the Dawson program is keeping this type of space, away from these children. I've hiked there. I grew up down there. I've hiked there now once on the Dawson program. Families cannot organize their lives around such a program. It really just makes it inaccessible to most families, and it makes it most inaccessible to the families that need it the most. It's really upsetting. It's really upsetting when I go out hiking with these kids and they haven't seen this. I think the Sierra Club is just missing the point on when they read John Muir. He talks about the value of solitary time in nature, and that is not available to these kids. And a Dawson program is not that. And then to say, oh, there's other trails, it totally misses the point also. John Muir wouldn't say, we've got Yosemite Valley, that we don't need Hetch Hetchy.
My name is Charlie Krenz. I'm with openthewatershed.org. I'm also a longtime member of the Committee for Green Foothills in California Audubon. Recently, I've heard a series of dire predictions as to what will happen if this watershed is opened up to the public, the dirt roads that run the length and width of the watershed. Before we jump to such dire conclusions, I hope that everyone knows that we, even in the pro-access community, understand that before any of these existing roads can be designated as a trail system, that there have to be environmental reviews, and from there we'll identify appropriate mitigations, and it's after that we can emerge with some kind of a public access plan. So if we're in fact worried about fire or endangered species or the occasional Cliff Bar wrapper that blows away from a visitor, we'll have more than adequate time to reflect upon the experiences of the people on the Fifield-Cahill Ridge Trail, the years of experience running the Sawyer Camp Trail, and the incredibly successful watershed access programs in Marin County and Santa Clara County and across the Bay Area. I hope that as you sift through the facts and try to figure out what the best path forward is here, that you'll keep in mind we have a magnificent trail system. It's already built and it's in place. It's just waiting there for us to use it. If you live in the southern half of San Francisco or the communities of the Northern Peninsula, this is your local open space. And it's just a shame that so many communities have been denied access to the peace and the solitude and the beautiful vistas that this natural area could afford. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Next speaker is Lenny Roberts, followed by
Supervisor Peskin. It's good to see you in person. Thank you, honorable supervisors, for bringing up this for consideration. And thank you, all the wonderful supporters. For a large portion of time, like 10 or 15 years, I did research on the internet about the watershed, and I learned so much stuff. And I'm a person who spends a fair amount of time reading old newspapers in the California newspaper archives. And I was amazed by just the pure amount of historical sites, just colorful historical stories, and the amount of cultural heritage that is within the borders of the watershed, but completely off the radar of anything I learned in public schools or from my family, which has been here before 1906. And there are people here whose grandparents, in 1928, would go to Pilarcitos for picnics. And Bowersborn and William Ralston made sure that this was one of the most important historically places in the state of California, therefore the world. And nobody knew any of that. And this is 3 years ago. So I started a Facebook page, and there are people here in support, and I love y'all. And there are some amount of people that could not make it here. And of those amount of people that wanted to make it here, some of them might have sent emails to your office. And I have an opinion that this is an important cultural heritage site. It's my opinion. And there are people here that have an opinion that this will imperil our water supply or put the natural environments that we all love in danger. But by law, we must analyze scientifically these problems. And we must do this responsibly by law. Therefore, logically, you must trust the CEQA process and vote yes on this resolution. Thank you.
My name is Bob Siegel. I'm on the board of the Bay Area Ridge Trail. And also for the last 14 years, I've been a docent on the Ridge Trail and the Fifield Kale Trail and led, 70, 80 hikes. I'm very familiar with, I think 25 years ago, when this broom was packed in the Board of Supervisors, insisting the POC open the trail, and they very cautiously said, just with the docent program, we'll do it. That docent program has been successful to the extent that we know that people have used the trail wisely, but I also know that a lot of people want more access to it. The trails are very far from the 4 reservoirs there, as my predecessor just spoke about, on working roads used occasionally by the patrols of the San Francisco PUC. This is a nice further step after a very successful first step, a very cautious first step. And I applaud you for moving on and making this similar to the East Bay Mud, which those trails too are used very sanely and nicely by those people with the permit. I thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Burns Smith. I work for the Bay Area Ridge Trail Council, and Supervisor Peskin, I'd be happy to answer any questions you have, either now or when I'm done. But what I'd like to do just very briefly is touch on some very specific things about the Ridge Trail that the crossing of the watershed sort of highlights. Joel talked about the fact that it's only on the Ridge Trail in the San Francisco's Peninsula watershed that we have such a restriction of continuity. And it's that continuity that's really a special feature of the Ridge Trail. Within a month or two, we will have over 80 continuous miles of Ridge Trail completed, essentially from Highway 92 at the Quarry Trailhead of the Peninsula watershed up to the middle of Marin County, up on top of Big Rock Ridge. But that continuity only exists for portions of Wednesday, Saturday, and Sunday on the Peninsula watershed. So there's roughly, if you count up the number of hours that you can currently go through the Peninsula watershed on the Ridge Trail, there's only about a day and a half of continuity of access. I also wanted to point out there's one sort of confusing wording on page 4, line 14. Starts at line 13. Constructing the Bay Area Ridge Trail south of 92 to the G. Flagler Estate and taking the trail easement from the Ridge Trail Council. The easement itself is only 1 mile long. It's one of the 2 miles. It's only on the Skylawn property.
That's the cemetery piece?
Correct. It's actually the portion that's on the cemetery's property. We don't have the easement on your property at all. But it makes perfect sense to us for you to take that easement from us to provide the continuity.
I'm sorry, your time is up.
If I could just follow up with the question that I was asking the previous speaker, which is, and maybe I'm wrong about this, but I think that there is a broad consensus at the PUC, at the staff level, and I don't want to speak for my colleagues, but I think historically, at least at the Board of Supervisors, and I would imagine currently at the Board of Supervisors, to, one, go with a less restricted type of access, and I think that staff is supporting that and trying to figure out how to get there, and two, to be able to be a part of the Bay Area Ridge Trail succeeding in all 550 of its miles. My question to the board member who previously spoke is that my perception, or do you concur, or do you believe that at least at the PUC staff level that there is a commitment, albeit maybe not moving as quickly as we all might like given the vicissitudes of money, CEQA, and bureaucracy?
I'd throw NEPA in there as well. I completely agree with you there, and I think that this is part of a sort of a long arc that I've noticed over the last 25 years or so, and that is a change in management philosophy among lots of different kinds of land managing agencies. And what I mean by that is it's increasingly the case that recreation lands, parklands, and the like, the management of those lands is tending more towards resource protection in the main, from a broad standpoint. And simultaneously, there's been a movement among the sort of purely resource protection agencies to move more towards some kind of public recreation access. So there's sort of this meeting. They're not crossing in the middle yet, or I'm not proposing that they should, but there's definitely that change over time.
Thank you.
Good afternoon. Thank you so much for hearing this important issue. My name is Christine Corwin, and I'm here to represent Save Our Recreation. With more than 10,000 members, Save Our Recreation is dedicated to promoting and safeguarding outdoor recreation opportunities on public lands in the San Francisco Bay Area. The opportunity to enjoy the great outdoors while pursuing healthy recreation activities is a key part of ensuring that the Bay Area is livable. We believe that these outdoor experiences should be accessible to everyone. We also believe that protecting the environment and recreational access can go hand in hand. With that said, Save Our Recreation strongly supports the resolution urging the SFPUC to expand public access to the Peninsula Watershed. As you know, residents of San Francisco and other parts of the Bay Area are in desperate need of more open space where they can recreate in the outdoors with their friends and family members. The Peninsula Watershed provides a perfect setting for recreation. According to the in-depth environmental impact analysis, opening up the watershed is completely compatible with protecting and preserving water safety and environmental stewardship. That's why allowing public access to water district lands is a common practice in water districts throughout the country. We have stunning examples of this, such as up in Marin County. Finally, Save Our Recreation strongly supports unaccompanied access over a docent-led program. The current docent system makes it impossible for people to wake up on a Saturday morning and decide they want to go for a hike or a bike ride. It also discriminates against people who have to take public transportation or ride their bikes to the trailhead. We feel that it is simply a way, the docent-led program is simply a way to keep the Bay Area public out of the watershed. We urge you to support this resolution. Opening the watershed will help preserve one of the things we love most about the Bay Area, being able to hike and bike and do other activities in the outdoors.
Thank you. So after Byrne, go ahead.
Thank you. Good afternoon. My name is Chris Brousseau. I live in San Mateo, and I'm here to respectfully request that you vote to approve this resolution and move it forward, and that you support a transparent, a complete, and a scientific process to finish the evaluation of these important questions. Today, there's just 3 quick points I'd like to make with you. You're going to hear a lot. Number 1, I believe opening the watershed is safe. There's been prior public analysis that shows that the risks are minimal, and further analysis will happen as we go through the CEQA process. Secondly, just to dimension things, we're not talking about unrestricted access. We're talking about responsible public access on existing roads, that if you look at the surface area of those roads, it's 0.3% of the whole area that we're talking about. Very small. They're also far from the sources of water, okay? And then finally, here in the Bay Area, we have multiple successful examples of agencies who are able to balance these concerns of safety of the water supply and responsible public access. Marin's been mentioned. The Mid-Peninsula Regional Open Space Reserves have been mentioned as well. Secondly, the current docent access system is unfair to most people. The number of people who get to use that is minuscule. I think in a recent publication there were 9,000 people in a year that had access to this. I'm not quite sure how that's possible, given that usually once a week or a few times a week there's 20 or so slots you can sign up for. But with that said, if you look at the access that's happened in Marin, they're having 1 million visitors a year without negative impacts. The Mid-Peninsula, the East Bay Mud has 50,000 people. Again, water district, minimal impacts. So do the math yourself. And then finally, just as public service, opening the space is in the public interest. And I'd like to thank you all very much for your public service.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Matthew Blaine. I'm a resident of D8 and the chair of SF Urban Riders. We're one of the leading trail advocacy organizations in San Francisco with over 1,000 members, and our focus is on trail advocacy. We do trail maintenance, public education, habitat restoration, other activities towards that end. We also have a focus on bicycles. I'm here to thank the supervisors for bringing this resolution forward, and also specifically to thank the PUC for working through this, because this project has been going on for years, possibly decades. One of the things which makes the Bay Area so unique is the proximity of these open spaces and the city. Watershed open spaces have a long history in America, certainly since at least the 19th century. These are spaces which are to protect the water, closed to industry, but yet open to recreation. This includes Crystal Springs, which includes highways and roads right next to the reservoir. We just particularly like to support this resolution. A large part of it is because of the connectivity, which the Ridge Trail people have mentioned. This allows people who are in San Francisco to connect south to the peninsula on foot, on a bicycle. Particularly ironic if you try to do this today, you'll come up to a big sign which says, closed, no trespassing, this is public property, which is pretty ironic, especially since apparently before it was public, in fact, public could access the property. There's definitely environmental concerns, and we believe the PUC is addressing this through their environmental impact process, and we're confident that they'll support this. I just wanted to comment about the docent system. I was talking to people about this weekend. Most people don't even know it exists, so all they see is the no trespassing signs. So we definitely encourage access with a particular priority on the Ridge Trail and other connections. Thank you.
You.
Michael Naranjo, thank you to the supervisors for your time today. I'm here to speak strongly in support of expanding responsible access to the watershed. I'm going to make 3 quick points. The first is, given this country's and particularly the Bay Area's health crises, people need access to open spaces close to where they live. Responsible access will help at least the city and the immediate suburbs access a true treasure that's close to us. Secondly, with respect to our environmental concerns, I think everyone that has spoken today has the same feeling about protecting the environment. But in order to have respect for the environment and to propagate that respect for future generations, you need access to the environment. And responsible access is the way to go here. And then thirdly, with respect to the concerns about fires and other environmental issues, no one is advocating opening access irresponsibly. Everything will go through the appropriate environmental measures here, and those measures have already started, and they will continue to go through. This is not willy-nilly opening up this resource. Again, I strongly urge passing this resolution, and thank you for your time today.
Thank you. Next.
Hi, good day. My name is Mark Pryor. I'm a 25-year resident of San Francisco, avid trail user. I have explored extensively the Marin lands, the Santa Clara lands, and I am an annual pass holder for the East Bay Mud Trails. That system works. There's nobody out there. There's no damage. There's no wrappers. What I have done is walk the bike trail, the easement that was referred to earlier. It is within striking distance of the water today. The fact, the concerns about the water safety just don't make any sense to me as a citizen. The road that we're talking about is a dirt road with trucks going up and down it. I have stood at those gates. I can't get to the other trails very easily because I don't have a car, and I would like to strongly urge the supervisors to pass this plan. Thank you.
Supervisors, my name is Nate McKitterick. I moved to San Francisco in 1989. I'm a homeowner in San Francisco. I currently reside in San Mateo County, where I rent and where I've been a planning commissioner for 12 years. It's difficult, and by the way, I am a Sierra Club member for a long time. It's difficult from a planning perspective to articulate a planning-based rationale to exclude the public from these lands. As a resident of San Mateo County, from that perspective, we have a lot of open space on the peninsula, but it's only accessible if you can go there during the week because the parking's all full. It's only accessible if you have the time to drive somewhere and have a car, especially if you have a family. But one of the reasons we have planning rules, as I've learned being a public official, is because you do get situations where people talk about keeping them out. I mean, who gets kept out with a permit system? Who's using the docent system right now? Who are the people who are being kept out? And that's a question I want you to think really hard about, because I'll give you a hint. It's not middle-aged white guys like me. It's people that are using open space to the maximum, filling up the parking lots every weekend with their families in places like Candlestick Point, who just want to give a little place to have a picnic or a hike or get away from the urban environment that these lands are in. This is urban open space. So we have these rules. We have CEQA. And I hope you will look closely at those and not at the fear of who we're keeping out from these lands, whether they're young people, whether they're people of color, the people who should be allowed to use these lands as they are public and open space. Thank you very much.